Okay, so we are going to be following steps 9 to 12, although I'll talk through step 13 as well, of the Interchange Crossbody Backpack from the Complete Bag-Making Masterclass. Okay, so at this point I've got my flap completed. So I've sewn my flap, I've added my hook to the bottom and my O-ring and my 2 triangle rings. So my flap is done. This bag is actually for me and I'm a little bit clumsy, so I have increased the length of my tabs. I made them 3 inches long rather than 2 inches long, and then overlapped 1/2 inch as I've basted these on. And I might add a rivet through them later once the bag's complete. And then I've got my back pocket. Let me tell you the name of that pattern piece. That is the C back pocket. So my flap is complete. I've got C back pocket in the exterior and my lining fabric. And then I've got a B exterior main panel, and that has been interfaced and stabilized and is ready to go. Okay, so we'll pop that to one side for the moment, the back panel, and then we're going to use our C back pocket pieces. So I'm going to start with my exterior and just pop my flap right sides down on top. Let me mark my centers first. This is something that I should have done when I was cutting out and I didn't. I might have got that in the wrong place. Let's double check. No, that was right. Okay, excellent. Just help us line everything up there. Okay. So I'm going to pop my flap on top, right sides together. So I've got my exterior matching my exterior. And I'll line up my centres. And just add a little clip along the top here, just for the moment while I'm working with it. And then what we're going to do, we're going to add our lining back pocket on top. Again, matching all of these edges, sides and edges and centres and everything all together, nicely aligned. Sorry if you can hear an alarm, there's a car alarm going off outside. The joys of being in the town centre. Okay. Right, so now I'm going to sew along the entire top edge of that. So let's double check what's the seam allowance. Regular seam allowance, 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimetre. Okay. Now it does get thick over your tabs, so just take your time. I'm going to back stitch at the start and the end, and I might just do a little back stitch where the flap meets these pockets. We're just going to carry on all the way to the end. Back stitch where that flat edge meets again, and then back stitch at the end. I think most people are able to get this part sorted, no problem. Okay, so what we do, we open it up. Don't open it up all the way, you just pull in your lining panel back. Okay, so now we've flipped over to step 10. So open this out and give that a little press if you are able, and then we're going to top stitch 3mm or 1/8 of an inch from the seam on the lining side. Okay, I might turn mine around like that. So just give it a nice press or a little tug, and you should feel under that bit that you're sewing, you should feel that you've got your seam allowances and your tabs under there. So I'm going to increase to my top stitching stitch length just to make it slightly neater. And you don't need to back stitch at the start and the end for this, because this is not integral to the construction. It's just to hold everything in place. Again, take your time on this one because you are going through some thick layers here. So because I didn't press, I'm just pulling my lining back pocket down and out of the way. And we're going to sew all the way to the end. Right, lovely. Okay, so you should have your seam allowances and tabs sewn to the lining panel only. Keep the panel like this, so you've got your flap and your exterior back pocket and your lining back pocket, and they're opened out so that we're on the lining side. And we'll get our main panel, exterior main panel, put that right sides up, and then pop this panel right sides down with the lining side facing your exterior main panel. Okay, so at this point we've got exterior back pocket, flap, and then underneath we've got our exterior main panel. Keep that opened out, and we are going to just I'm using Mora from So Hot, so I'm going to pin that in place because I know that my pin marks will come out, and actually it will be in my seam allowance anyway, so it won't be seen, but I just want to know that these layers are not shifting once it's all lined up. Okay, this is the trickiest step in this pattern. So once you've got the hang of this one, you're good to go, and you can modify other patterns then to include this pocket, and that's the sort of main aim of the book, is that you can use the techniques in other things. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we are just going to draw on our lining back pocket. So line your ruler up so that the edge is 1/2 inch or 1.2 centimeters over this corner cutout at the bottom there. And I'm just using a pencil. I'm just going to draw a line. That line is 1/2 inch or 1.2 centimeters above the corner cutout. And I'll do the same on that side just to join those up. Okay, and then we're going to do the same on the side edge of the corner cutout, and we're going to draw our line there. And I've just gone slightly onto those seam allowances at the top there, and then the same on this side. So we're just going 1/2 inch in from that corner cutout. So I've got 1/2 inch or 1.2 centimeters space here, and then a box extending from the seam allowances down, around and up again. And we're going to sew along this line. So we're going to start here at the top, just on the seam allowances. So down to this corner, stop with a needle down and pivot. So along this bottom edge, stop with a needle down and pivot, back up to the seam allowance on the other side. Okay. So I'm going to change back to my regular construction length seam allowance and make sure this is all nice and flat under my presser foot. There's a lot of thick layers here, but as long as everything's nice and flat, you should be okay. So I'm starting, I'm not overlapping the seam line, the furthest seam line. So I'm starting inside the seam allowance. I'm going to start my needle down because that'll make it easier to pivot. And we're going to back stitch a couple of stitches and then sew down this line. to the corner, stop with the needle down, lift your presser foot and pivot. I'm going to sew along the bottom line. So I've stopped at the corner with my needle down, lift my presser foot and pivot. Back up the last line and then stopping just on those seam allowances and some back stitches there. I'm going to trim these threads. Okay, now before we trim anything else, what I want to do, I'll take these pins out. What I want to do is double check everything is as it should be before I cut anything. So we can pull this exterior back pocket down over that and just double check that we've got this hidden slip pocket under the flap, and that looks fine to me. Okay, so what we can do now is just trim this excess from around the pocket that we've just sewn. Let me double check, 1/4 inch it says in the book. So where that stitching line is, I'll just draw another line 1/4 inch to denote where to trim, 1/4 inch or 6mm. And just cut this excess fabric away. You can, you can sort of cut your piece smaller to start with, but then you have to be extremely accurate in your cutting and sewing. So I think it's just easier to cut it the same size, sew it and then trim it down later. But this will just reduce an extra layer in these boxed corners and help you get a neater finish in your boxed corners. If you've got too many layers as you're sewing these, it can result in a bit of a messy finish, a bit of an awkward finish. Right, so what we can do now is pull the exterior back pocket down over to cover that and clip that in place. Make sure your layers are as they should be. Your lining should be tucked in underneath. Like so. Let me double check on the pocket instructions that I haven't missed anything. No, lovely. Okay. So what I can do now is just sew. Let me get my pencil so I can indicate where I'm going to sew. I'm going to start here in the top corner. No, I'm going to start this side in the top corner, and I'm going to sew all the way down around the outside, sealing everything in just with a basting stitch inside the seam allowance. So all of these layers will stay together. If you want to add any rivets, then you can do so. I would recommend putting them here in between where the tab and the edge of the flap is, just under that seam there. Okay, so there and there, if you want to add any rivets, and that will just add a little bit of extra stability into the top here. And make sure that your flap and your back pocket are nice and secure. And then when your bag is complete, your flap will sit over the front of that bag. And then when you open the flap, you've got this little secret hidden pocket in the back there with a nice bit of extra stability onto it. Nice and secure. You can pop in there whatever you like and whatever you want to keep secure. Okay, so I hope you found that helpful, and I would love to see your Interchange backpacks from the Complete Bag-Making Masterclass. This is available from my website, www.themakespace.uk, where I'm selling signed copies. Thank you for your time and happy sewing.